All right, welcome everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Collaboration and Content Sharing with ArcGIS Online. My name is Chris Whitmore and this is Paul Barker. We're both product engineers on the ArcGIS Online team, and content sharing is really a fundamental part of every workflow, and we're going to expand upon the concept. Kelly and Ian just did the presentation just a few minutes ago, if you guys were here for that talked about sharing publicly. What we want to do is kind of take it a step further and talk about overall sharing with ArcGIS Online. So we're going to talk about the ArcGIS Online sharing model, what that means and what you can do with it, whether that's sharing content within your organization or sharing content between organizations privately or sharing to the public. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that are coming next. So first, what is the ArcGIS Online sharing model? Basically, it is you are sharing the content you put in ArcGIS Online with others, whether that is private sharing via group, whether that's sharing with your organization, or whether that's sharing with your public. And it's a secure model, meaning that you share your data privately, the public can't access it. The people that you do not specifically share it with cannot access it. So whether that's supported within just your own organization, or if it's sharing publicly, or between organizations. And you can even get into where you have your data shared and you can only share specific parts of the data. So we become really granular in how you can share your data publicly and also what you can do with sharing other content. And you can also have it to where access is controlled by your identity, whereas in this scenario is like, you have to sign into your ArcGIS Online account, then the specific account where this content is shared privately with you. And then, like I said a moment ago, you can share just specific pieces of your data that you have uploaded in the cloud through feature layer views, and you can only allow whether it's certain individuals in a different organization, or you can even have cases where you have a layer that's public, but it's only an ad feature scenario, so like crowdsourcing. You don't want your public users to be able to see the data that you are taking in, but you still want them to be able to edit and contribute, whether that's like crime reports, vandalism type things, or really any number of scenarios. And so with that, we'll launch into a few demos. There we go. Sorry, one more. There we go. All right, so as I'm trying to set up these demos, trying to think about what were the best cases to really show, and really all of them are valid. All of them really depend on the workflow, and every workflow in ArcGIS Online, sharing is a fundamental piece of it. So as we walk through this, I realized I'd rather just give an kind of overview of some of the things you can do. So first, you share content from my content or from the item details. And you can share in bulk, you can share individual items, and you can share with the groups that you have either own or can contribute to as a member. And I have quite a few here. And then I'll get to this more in a moment, but I did want to call it out here is that maybe some of you have already seen this. It's been around for a few years now, but you can share with groups where the members of the group can also help manage that content. So say if you have a web map that there's some shift responsibilities because it's disaster response or something where it's really, you need to be on top of monitoring it, you can invite members into these groups and then they can manage the content in the web map as if they were the owner, but they still want to be able to do things like delete it. All right, so I want to step into sharing within your organization. When you share within your organization, you have a couple options. First, like I was just showing on the content tab, is that you can just check the box and share with your organization, and immediately all the members of your organization can see the content that you shared with them. You can also share content with a group within the organization, and whether that's just like something where it's a thematic organizational concept in the sense, hey, I want my organization everybody in the organization to have access, but I still want to be kind of organized in a group. And like in this case, I have a 3D content group, and everybody in the organization can still access a group, they can view the group, and they can see the contents of the group. And so it's still shared with the organization, but it's organized within a group. And then there are other scenarios where you can share privately within a group, within other members or with other members of your organization. So I'll step through some of these options for doing these things. So I'm going to do a quick demo group, give it a name, summary, some tags, and then we get into the meat of the options. So first you have who can view the group. And some of these things seem like, oh, I'll just gloss over it, but they are important details when you set these things up. So it could be only the group members. And this basically means that anybody outside of the group members, the group owners, and organization administrators cannot see the group. So it's really something like, hey, there's no discovery available. I just invite the members, and they can then see the group and then potentially the content within the group. And then further, you can also do it, who can join this group? Whether it's a request membership only, so it's approved by the group manager or group owner, or it's something where it has to be invited, or you can have it to where anyone can just join the group. Say if you have a group publicly and you want members from other organizations or anyone that finds a group, hey, I'm interested in this content, I'd like to just join this group and view it. And then finally, you have who can contribute content to the group, whether that's group members or only the group owner and the managers. So that's something where, hey, I want all the group members to be able to contribute. It's a kind of a free-flowing group. There's contents coming from different angles. Or no, I'm setting up the content as a group owner. I might delegate some of the responsibilities to a group manager, but ultimately I'm the one setting the content available for the group members to view. And then, like I was mentioning a moment ago, with the shared update capabilities, is what items in the group can its members update? Whenever you own an item, you can update it as the owner. It doesn't matter whatever group it's shared with. However, with these shared update groups, if you're a member of the group, you can update the content that somebody else owns. And that comes back to the group, the shift work, maybe with the web map for disaster response scenarios, where, hey, I need to drop this web layer, I need to update this web layer, or whatever the case may be. And if you're sharing data publicly through open data, this is the option you would use here. It's whenever the group is public, you can select this option, and if you have your open data site or hub site set up, the content of this group will then be available through open data. All right, so I already have a group created, and I want this group to be sharing privately. This would be shared privately. It could be within your organization with certain members, or it could be sharing privately between organizations. And one of the things about this is that sometimes, and often, whenever you're sharing privately with other organizations, those members, their profiles may not be easily discoverable. Has anybody tried to share privately between groups and run into this issue? Oh yeah, heckling. So let's step through that. I'm the only member of this group, but I have an account in a different organization that I want to add. First, I would unselect the only search in my current organization option, and let's see. And what you're going to see is that I have a lot of accounts, but the account that I'm looking for, CW Whitmore, is not listed. You see that I have my usernames and then my name's with this, and that's because my account is private. So it's not going to be returned in a search of the general hits for Chris Whitmore. And you can see that this is the account I'm looking for. It's username CW Whitmore, and then my profile is private. All right, so, but that's not quite the stumbling block it would appear. Is you can still type in the username exactly, and we would say, hey, that username does exist in the system, we can send an invite to it. So there's an extra hurdle there, but you can still invite private users to your group from a different organization or from your own organization without having to say, hey, make your profile public, or what do we do? So I'm gonna go ahead and send the invitation. And for those of you who join groups, be familiar with this, is I go back to the account that was invited and have a lot of notifications, but you now see that I have a notification to join this group. And I'm now set up to share privately between two different organizations. And then with some of the different tools, you can then extend that to where, hey, I want all of organization B to be a part of my group in organization A. So you could really expand this to be where it's true organization to organization sharing. And this is something that is on a roadmap to improve, where you can have essentially a trusted relationship with organizations. Maybe it's interagency work or something like that. And then as part of this, if say I have a hosted feature layer, and I have one right here, and this is a primary data set, and maybe it's a master data set, and you have a lot of data that you don't want exposed completely with others, but maybe you have some contractors that you need to have review some of the data, or maybe you need to have collect some of the data, but you don't want to make all the data available to them. Well, an option for that is to first, you can share privately with the group, but then you can also create a view layer of that hosted feature layer, which then allows you to create a custom view that you can configure with the data that you only want them to access, and whether that's read-only, whether that's editable. You can set an attribute definition to only show attributes that or fields that make records that qualify by that definition, only hide sensitive fields, or only expose an area of interest. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, and he's going to discuss some options with sharing publicly.
All right. So how many people have used hosted feature layer views? In my personal opinion, I think they're one of the coolest things that we've added for you guys in the last year. It really allows you to tailor a data set for the audience. And like Chris said, whether that's turning off fields that don't make sense for that end user, whether that's restricting the data to a specific geographical area, or even doing an attribute definition, say only, if you're managing crowdsourced data, only showing the public the data that you've approved. So maybe there's a QA, QC process, you want to make sure there's not inappropriate content that's submitted by the public, as you like to trust people, but foul language gets into comment streams, whether that's in a GIS or the rest of the internet. So a lot of times in that crowdsourcing scenario, you want that buffer. You want to be able to filter out things and make sure that you vetted it and it makes sense. So I'm just going to walk through a quick example that talks about sharing publicly and some things to think about. I should probably switch over to my screen. Anybody from Ottawa in the room, out of curiosity? All right, I work up in the Ottawa R&D office, so I've got a set of bike trails here, and if I went to share this right now, maybe I wanted to share it with the public, maybe there's an event going on, it's probably a bad idea. I don't want to share my master copy of the data. It's also editable for me, so there's not much value in the public editing my my bike trails. So, like Chris said, what we really want to do is use a view. So if I go over here and I create a view layer, I'm just going to call it a quick name. This will just take a few seconds. And so really what that's doing is almost making a copy of the feature layer so that I can use it, and it has independent sharing, it has independent editing. And so even though my original data set is editable, what I've done now is actually created another layer that still points to that same data, but it's read-only. So you can scroll down here and you can see that I don't have editing enabled. If, like Chris said, I wanted the crowdsourcing option, I could enable editing, and maybe I could say I want to add features, but editors can't see features. So they can push data in, but they can't see anything. So there's a lot of additional control you get by leveraging views. And it still all points back to the same data, and before someone asks, views don't consume credits. It's all the same data under the hood. It costs nothing extra to use views, and it gives you a lot more control. So I'm just going to add this quickly to the map. I'm going to turn off, make sure I didn't save my editing. Switch my base map to something a little that matches my cartography better. So I've got a lot of bike trails. And in this particular case, say maybe there was a biking event initiative in a specific community. What I could do is actually prepare a layer just for that community. So if I zoom into this little area here, which is called Bridlewood, for those that are interested, I can actually come in here and restrict that data set just to that community. And so I can set a view definition. And so there's three things that you can do. You can pass it an attribute query, and that'll filter the attributes. You can hide fields that don't make sense, and you can restrict that data geographically. And one of the big questions we get asked about views is, well, what's the difference between that and a filter? And the big difference is when you use view definitions, that data is restricted all the way back to the REST endpoint. So a user can turn off a regular filter and see all of the data. Using view definitions, it is strictly enforced at the layer. So there's no way that user can access data that you aren't showing them. So from a security standpoint, it's a really good best practice. So I'm going to define an area of interest. And there's a few things I can do here. If maybe my community was a square, I could really quickly just draw the extent. If I wanted to be a little more precise, I can switch the tool and get some additional granularity. And so I'm just going to finish sketching. And we're going to apply that. And what that's going to do is update the definition on the view. And now whoever's consuming this layer can only see that data. If I wanted to hide, this data set doesn't have a lot of fields, and I'm not concerned about sharing them. But if I wanted to, I could come in here and turn off a field. And if I did that, anybody using that data can't see that attribute. And if you need to update them, it's really quick. So I can just come back in here, come back into define area of interest. I can click remove. And so now, I could add this layer into a web map. It's focused. It's for a specific use case. It only has the data that's meaningful to the audience. And we could do just that. So if here, let me go back to my content here. Just refresh this. Cancel out. And now you'll notice if I go to share this, the original data set, and I try and share with the public, we do try and warn you. There's lots of times that people accidentally share. Sharing is pretty easy, so easy that sometimes you accidentally share editable data with the public. And that's not always your intention. So we do try and warn you, like if you were in the previous presentation, like Kelly said, so that you're aware that you're sharing something that the public can edit. That's great for you as a user, but if you're managing lots of people within an organization, it would be also easy for other people to potentially do that. And one of the things that I wanted to show is how in 15, 20 lines of code, you can actually use the ArcGIS Python API to just run a simple query against your organization and identify what layers in your organization are public, and additionally what layers are editable. So if you wanted to do a periodic audit and make sure that someone isn't accidentally sharing something that they shouldn't do, it's really easy to do in the Python API. So once you're set up, you sign into your GIS, which is this line right here, and then you just pass as a search. And in my case, I'm searching for feature services that are hosted, and I want, you have to send how many results. By default, it'll return 10 results. I know that I probably have more than 10, so I'm just bumping the number up to a big number here. And what I've done here is created a list of the capabilities I want to look at on the feature service. And then after I've set those two things up in Python, all I really have to do is run the search. And then what I'm doing is looping through the layers that are in that search result. And if any of these feature service capabilities are in that feature service, I'm just writing it out to the debugger. And so we can see that, oops, that's the wrong one. So if I ran that right now, it's a little slow because of the conference internet, but we should, in about 20 or 30 seconds, hopefully start seeing a list. So it's going to go through all the search results, anything that matches. So it's printing out basically the name of the map, the owner of the map so that I know who to go chase down and tell them to not share that map publicly. And so it's just an easy, simple way that you can do, in a couple lines of code, audit and make sure that you're not sharing more information than you should. And it's particularly sharing in authoritative data that the public can change at whim, which most people don't want. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, no, sorry, I've got another slide. Hang on. Let me just bring this up. So we've talked about sharing. Let's talk a little bit about what's next. So is anybody in the early adopter program with collaborations? Okay. So the idea behind collaborations is that if you happen to have a portal as well as an ArcGIS Online organization, it should be easy for you to push content back and forth between portal and online. And that's the goal of collaboration. Whether that's your own organization, that you're managing it as a, and you happen to have both, or between organizations for truer collaboration. And so if you're interested in that workflow, what you can do is talk to your account rep, sign up for the early adopter program, and start kicking the tires at it. But you can have some of the nice things if you're using it kind of as a push model in your own organization. You can do all of your data editing in your enterprise GIS, and then when you periodically push those changes out to ArcGIS Online seamlessly. It uses the same sync framework as Collector does, so anything adds, updates, deletes, all propagate through. So it's really handy, and it's a great way to share content within your organization across portal and online, or even, like Chris said, between organizations. You could have two portals, maybe a different state agency. You guys could set up a trusted relationship and then share content seamlessly. And the nice part about that is, you're still managing the data, and what you're doing is just making it easier for other people to access it. And with that, I think Chris is going to show you something else that's
think there's time?
Coming soon. I think there's time.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right, great. So we're going to do another quick demo here on something that's coming up for what's next. This is something that's coming in the April release here in 4 weeks or so. And you may have heard about it, but it's content categories. And while it's a larger project and something configurable at the organization level, the part that I want to show here is being able to configure categories on a group. So whenever you're maybe sharing a group with the public or with an organization, you can set up categories on the group and then categorize the content within that group accordingly. And we'll walk through that real quick. So first you see that group categories, and I don't have any categories configured on this group. So I'm going to set some up. Several options are offered. ArcGIS categories, which are based off of the ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World, the categories it uses currently. And then we also offer ISO and Inspired categories derived from those standards. And I'm going to just select the ArcGIS categories, and there is a hierarchical relationship where you have a parent and child categories. And I'm going to just leave this one as it is. I'm not going to make any changes. However, it would be completely customizable for both parent and child categories, and however it would work for that group and overall for your organization. All right, so I have categories set up for my group, and now I want to start then categorizing content. And I have some hurricane data, and so I want to actually have it associated with a hurricane-related category. And this is covered within the Living Atlas categories already as environment, weather, and climate. And what you see is that it's added to weather and climate as a child category of environment. So, all right, so I have a couple items categorized, and now when I go to environment and say maybe I'm now the end user or the people you're sharing with, and coming to this group and looking through the categories, you can see that I have it's under environment, the parent category. Now if I drill further into weather and climate, you can see that the items that I've categorized as weather and climate are now showing. So that's it, a quick demo of something coming in the April release. And this is a larger story, but this is one small piece of it. And I think with that,
I think that's all we got. But yeah, content categories are a great way to have a stricter and hierarchical tag system, basically. So it avoids people having sort of, kind of, almost the same tags across everything. So it makes it a lot easier to enforce and improve that discoverability of your data, and makes it easier for people to find that when searching. Yes? Question was, when is it coming to Portal?
I believe it will be in Portal in the 10.6.1 release, around user conference.
Yeah, so we've got a few resources up here that talk about some of the things we covered today. But right now, any questions that you guys have, that's what we're here for. Yes? So the question was inviting a public user into your group.
As a part of an organizational account, public users cannot join it. It has to be actually another organizational member. It could be from a different organization, could be from the same organization, but not a public account. You can ask many of the product managers that are here.
Yes,
sorry.
The other gentleman, you had a... Great question. Do view layers have their own unique URL? And the answer is yes. So they have their own independent URL, their own set of capabilities. They can be independently shared. So they're basically another front end to the same data. Yeah. The question is, are views only derived from feature services? And yes, so they are a capability that is exclusive to feature services at this time. Yeah, they are hosted. So right now, yeah, so they only work with hosted feature services. I mean, with ArcGIS server, if you're using like the traditional server, you can kind of do the similar things by publishing the data multiple times. And if you're referencing an enterprise geodatabase, it's not going to duplicate the data. We are looking to add that in a future release of Portal. So if you're using the hosted feature services in Portal, you'll be able to do something very similar in the near future.
No, 10.6 does have.
Oh, 10.6
views,
has
yes.
it? Okay,
Yeah.
it's there now.
However, I don't think it has some of the view definition capabilities. They're not all there yet, but they're working to achieve parity with online and to keep in sync with us.
So the area of interest that you saw today is probably missing from 10.6 Portal, but that will get added in later. So.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, great.
Can you assign ownership of an item to someone in another organization, or would you have to clone it to their other organization?
So the question is, can you assign ownership of an item in your organization to someone else in a different organization? No, it's basically limited to your organization. You would have to have something. If it's a web map, it could be something where they just save a copy of it. But if it's data, it would actually need the data, but would need to be actually taken from organization A and put into organization B, and actually then hosted there. And then they would then be, they would have the credit charges associated with storing the data for their own organization type of thing. But yeah.
So you said the view definition with a box or a polygon that we drew. Is there going to be the ability to select polygons or I don't know?
It's a great question. We do want to let you set view definitions from features in another layer. One of the things that is going to be coming that I didn't show today is we want to make it easier to use the same definition across multiple views. So in the April release of Online, you'll be able to, when you're setting up a view definition, if there's a view layer in the map already that happens to have a definition, you can just use that. And you have the option to apply it to all layers under the service as well. So if you have 200 layers, you don't have to go draw 200 boxes anymore. So, and that's actually on by default moving forward. So, all right. Well, thank you guys very much for attending.
Have a good afternoon.
Please take the time to fill out the feedback. We do pay a lot of attention to that and try to make improvements from year to year. So we appreciate you taking the time.